Good evening and welcome to the 2-minute warning brought to you by the Westside Gazette, the oldest, boldest, and blackest newspaper in Broward County. I'm David Wright, and I'll be sitting in as a co-host tonight for our dear brother Perry Busby. Guys, put on your seatbelts here, get ready for an outstanding show for tonight. Brother Henry, anything you want to add to where we're going tonight?
Well, I would ask that you get the clinics out, the tissue box. There is an emotional floodgate that may open, and we might not be able to see it, but you will. And I just think that emotionally speaking, this is a topic that we all need to deal with, and we can do something about it. So that's where I am, and I'm just glad to have our guests come on, really profound, proficient. I don't want to say expert, but those who have actually been involved with this. So yeah,
Absolutely, been in the trenches. And for those of you that may not know, our topic tonight is human trafficking, and that this is not the gift for any time of the year. So we'll be getting more into that, but I hear this coming week is going to get cool here.
Down
across the country and down here.
Right. You were talking about that. The temperature. Folks don't believe in climate change, but this temperature is expected to drop across the country. I think it said over half of the country will be affected by this cold front. So.
Yeah, they're calling this a generational event. It's that monumental. It's only happening, every 30, 35 years or so. They're calling it an Arctic boom, all kinds of names that were created for this. But we have to think about those unhoused and those that are be truly impacted by these temperatures.
Right. If you're passing by people on the corner who normally stand and ask for a handout, if you got an extra blanket or some old coats, keep them in your car just in case to give out to those people to try to help them stay warm and stay healthy. Yeah, it's I know some people that truly won't like it. The iguanas. So bring on the cold, knock out the iguanas.
Knock out the iguanas. Yes.
But seriously though, David, you shared with me how catastrophic this could be, this weather front that's coming.
In the past, we've had surges in power outages and things of that nature, and we just want to make sure people are really prepared. We don't normally get that here in South Florida. I can recall the last time it snowed here in South Florida, which was back in 1977. That's a long time ago, but a lot of our peers may have not been born yet. But again, it is something to be somewhat concerned about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And being that it's the holiday season, and you want to walk in a winter wonderland, but you have to be careful. I mean, to us, 60, that's cold. So when it begins to dip down a little lower than that, then we are subjected to some conditions that we're not too familiar with, and it could actually hurt us. So.
And it's supposed to last a few days, so not just the 2 days, but maybe 4 or 5 days. So we want to get you ready for that. But I'm kind of anxious to get into this show.
Oh yeah.
But before we do that, anything else going on local here that you
of course, the Broward County School Board is becoming the laughing stock of in the nation for school districts. You have a superintendent who has been fired a couple of times and brought back, and then I understand that they actually set up a table outside of the boardroom to swear in a candidate who had not necessarily did everything he was supposed to be a part of this school board. So people are laughing at us all over the country.
Yeah, and we have a governor that chooses to step in anytime he feels like it to pull some strings. So we're gonna have to kind of keep our eye on this. And
I got to say this. Now, I'm not a fan, if you will, of our governor in his totality. I must say that. However, I do think that some of his appointees to the school board is an injection into an arm of an infested body that really needs this type of influence, if you will. Mr. Torrey Austin was doing a remarkable job as the board chair, so much so that those on the other side voted him out. And then today, his reappointment of and Dan, please forgive me if I chew your name. Help me out. Dan Foglioli? Yeah, Foglioli. Now, this young man comes from a diverse background, Brazil, and so he understands the plight of people of color, if you will. And the governor has appointed him to the gentleman's seat, who could not take his seat because he decided he wanted to pistol whip somebody some years ago. So therefore he didn't do what he was supposed to do to get his paperwork corrected in time. Yeah, so he could be seated. So we got a bunch of stuff going on here in our school system. And anytime or anything that deals with the school system directly affects our children. Now, people want to sit around and point fingers and say this and say that. But in the end, the bottom line is our educational system affects our children's learning. And that, in turn, flows over into society. So even though we may be the laughing stock, we may be beating a dead horse with our superintendent, who should have been gone a long time ago. If you don't believe me, just read some of the articles from the Westside Gazette. So
I kind of wonder what Mr. Fantastic would be saying about this.
And David, I was at his homegoing service. Mr. Williams, in his own right, is a legend in the educational arena and on the school board. So he transitioned last week, 2 weeks ago, and his home. It was a great homegoing service. Let me say that. But anytime you interject politics into a homegoing, it doesn't bode too well. So I'll just leave it at that. So,
but truly one of my biggest mentors. I had the opportunity of seeing him in the elementary school level before he reached the school board, and he was the city portier to serve with love back in those days. For me, first black man I saw in the school system, shirt tie, suited up, and true excellence. Yeah. I mean, he demanded that type of quality. So we're gonna miss him.
We are. He wasn't afraid. So to all of our guests who are joining us, we want to say thank you. Thank you very much. I know you could have been doing something else. You could have been doing your Christmas shopping or visiting the sick and the shed in, but you decided to join us and hear what is transpiring in this human trafficking, sexual exploitation, slavery type of atmosphere. So what's happening? What else is happening?
Well, I think we should go ahead and bring our guests on.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start with our doctor. You guys, she's no stranger to the show. She's been on before, and I'm going to let her share a little bit about her. Again, her name is Dr. Sandra Anderson. She is one of my favorite guests that's been on. She holds her own in any conversation that you would want to have. And Dr. Anderson, are you with us tonight?
I am. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Go ahead and just share a little bit about your background, please, for the audience. We may have some new viewers on tonight.
So my studies is in community care and counseling, marriage and family therapy. And that's what I stand for today. Even as an advocate and a survivor of human trafficking, I stand for family because that's where we're seeing the biggest implosion, where our families are dismantled, our society and our nation bears the marks. And we can see it all over social media, our every media channel. This is the issue that I hope that we can grapple with tonight and discuss and dialogue with. So I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a fitness instructor. I can go on and on, but most of all, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have survived so much adversity in my life from early childhood. And the Lord has a reason and a purpose for us being here, each and every one of us, from those who are presenting here tonight with me to those who are listening. There is a plan and a purpose that God has for us. The problem is we have a loss of identity and of who we are. And so when we don't know who we are, then anyone can subscribe to us of what they think we are, what they think we should be. And so with that being stated, we're going to get into that tonight.
Okay.
Awesome.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, our next guest, and I dare anybody to try to outwalk him. Our guest has walked across the country, I dare say, up and down, east and west, and he has challenged me to join him in his next walk. This gentleman is a proponent of human trafficking, and he walked, like I said, he not only talks the talk, he walks the walk. Our next guest is Mr. Roger DeHart. So come on, Roger, and tell us a little bit about you.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks again, Bobby, for allowing me to have this platform. It's such an honor to join you, and it's such a great honor to be with Sandra Maria Anderson again, and such one of my heroes. I told her before the show that she's what a true hero is. From what she's gone through to where she is now, I stand in awe of who she's become. And so, Sandra, thank you again for being a voice for yourself and for those that needs to hear from you. A little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Fort Lauderdale. I'm a Dillard High School graduate. I work for the Broward Sheriff's Office. I've been there, made 25 years a couple months ago. In that, I'm a bailiff. And as a bailiff, I worked in criminal court for 14, 15 years. And I had the honor of working with Judge Alona Holmes as her bailiff. But through that, I realized that when I found out Florida was number 3 as far as cases with human trafficking, I'm like, okay, Florida's number 3 in the country. I'm not seeing cases being prosecuted. I'm not seeing cases come through the system because I worked in criminal felony court. So that was a red flag for me. So I started attending different events and hearing the stories of the survivors, and that tugged at my heart. And so, I decided in 2018 I wanted to make some noise. I wanted to although I don't know everything about it, I feel like the little that God gave me, the little that I was blessed to learn about, I wanted to put into action. So I did a walk from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to Washington, D.C. In 2018, 2019, I did the same type of walk from the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco down to San Diego. And then last year I did the city of Houston because they're in the top 3 as far as missing girls, specifically missing Black girls in the country. And so I feel like that's my calling to just be that ally to survivors and victims that, especially as a man, because unfortunately men are the biggest perpetrators in this crime. And so I want to be the voice that says, no, we're not all like this. We're not all like this. There are a lot of men all over the world that just like me want to stand in the gap and say, no, I want to do my best to protect you. And so that's my calling in life. And that's why opportunities like this, I'm so grateful for, because it helps me as well as hopefully other people to realize that there's a big need for that.
Great. Roger, and to add to the testament and the fortitude of Dr. Anderson, we were supposed to have a special guest on, and unfortunately, she experienced a traumatic reaction in trying to understand where she came from to where we were trying to get her to be. She was a victim of human trafficking, so she couldn't come to grips with that. So Dr. Anderson, I will ask you first. The pain that she was feeling, the agony. How can we help those who maybe are experiencing some of that right now?
Mr. Henry, what a great question. And my heart goes out to her because it took a while before I was able to get where I am right now, where I could even speak about it. Oftentimes what victims do, survivors of human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking, is we repress those memories. But unfortunately, whatever we repress will manifest in very bizarre behaviors. I call them STIRBs, which are short-term energy removal behaviors. A few of those STIRBs are acting out sexually, becoming very promiscuous. Another STIRB is eating, gambling, drinking, and it goes on and on, even shopping. And one thing that we do is when we have outlived this, we never outlive the memory of it. So when I say that, I mean, we will outgrow it. For me, I went through this when I was 11 years old. However, even now in my 50s, I have to be mindful of what I watch, mindful of what I'm eating, mindful of where I am, mindful of what I'm listening to in order to keep myself in a safe place. Because when you survive human trafficking, unfortunately, you need a second rescue. And that second rescue is from what happens to us physiologically, somatically, and psychologically. And until we understand that and stop repressing it and gain the courage to face it and do our healing work, then we will make Big Farm ever richer because we will be on different medications. Like a lot of the people that I meet and I treat and I speak to, the first thing that happens is an influx of medications. Instead of getting to the bottom, the underlying, the driving, the episodic memory, the emotional memory, and these manifest in our body as if we never came out of our trafficking situation. So time will pass, but until we do our counseling work and our therapeutic work, the body cannot differentiate time. So we're literally out of time, or and some people say you're out of your mind with what you're doing. What are you thinking? That is crazy. You're out of your mind. That's exactly right. We're out of our mind because when we are not safe within our body, within this home of who we are as a human being, then we leave. A better word or the clinical word is we dissociate and we leave. So the lights are on and no one's home. And when that happens, anything can happen to us, and it does.
Dr. Anderson, you bring up a really great point. But my question is, in your studies, have you found that people of the African diaspora have not completely processed what our ancestors went through in slavery, and does it kind of double impact us today?
Absolutely, it is a double impact, and that's actually that's the premise and that's the thesis of my dissertation. So my dissertation is on transgenerational trauma, and I believe that's what you're speaking to, Mr. Wright. And I tell you, this is a new area of research for many researchers like myself, and I just finished my dissertation. The top 3 themes of the 8 themes that I discovered in my participants were: number 1, fatherlessness. Where does fatherlessness start in the Black community? What happened to this amazing role that men, the ones who understand, like Bobby Henry, when we were in the last program, and you spoke about your daughter, and I saw the love you have for your daughter. What's happening in our generations of Black men and Afro-Caribbean men that we are not staying at home to parent our children? We're not fighting for our children. Well, the number one theme I saw in my research is fatherlessness. Participants that are in their 70s, their 50s, their 30s, never even heard their father say, I love you. Some of them don't even know their father. And what we're finding out now in epigenetic studies and research, we're finding that there's molecules in the DNA that transmit from our great-great-grandfather. This is studies and research, evidence-based, that has been done, even with chimpanzees, that said when a bell rings and that bell signifies food, almost like Pavlov's dog, it signifies food. So I go to eat, but then when I eat, I get shocked. And while I'm getting shocked, the researcher introduces the smell of cherry blossoms, right? So now there's food, what I eat, there's a shock, which I don't like, and there's a scent of cherry blossoms. And then they move the study across generations, 3 generations, 4 generations. And guess what? The offspring now go to eat, and automatically they will start having the same symptoms that the original participants of the study had. So when they received that shock, they would defecate on themselves, they would throw up, and they would freeze, like in a frozen panic state. Now, here we are 4 generations later, and their offspring that never experienced that shock have the same defecation, the same regurgitation, and the same freeze response that happens neurologically from the amygdala in the brain. What does that look like for us today? And what are we seeing across the African diaspora? And that is this.
Okay.
Fathers are not there. Fathers are not in the home. That's what we're seeing. Domestic violence, huge theme in my research. We're seeing that. And what we're seeing is the vestiges of slavery. That's exactly what we're seeing. Generations passed from slavery, and we're seeing the same manifestations behaviorally that we're seeing in our forefathers.
Okay. Let me, Roger. I want to ask you this. Okay, you walked. You got out and you walked. What was one of the driving factors or points that you experienced during your walk? What was it that kept you on the path?
Let me tell you, there were a couple stories that reached me in different states that kind of refueled me, remotivated me. I was walking through Satellite Beach, and I stopped at a McDonald's, to eat. And when I got there, the manager told me, because he knew what I was doing, he said, I want to share something with you that happened a couple months ago. He said, there was a 15-year-old girl here that came here Monday through Friday to study. She was very wholesome. She came from a great family. She made great grades, and she would just go there every day to study for a couple hours. There was a gentleman, he was 26 years old. He saw her pattern. So this was his first conversation with her. He said, hey, how you doing? Just want you to know, you studying here, it's really encouraging to see. He said, if I can do anything to help you, please just let me know. But I just want you to know what you're doing, you're going to make a great future. Gave her $100. The next day he came back. He said, look here, I thought about you last night. I'm so encouraged, I can barely sleep. You're really gonna make a difference. He said, I would love to help you in whatever way I can. And hey, I'm here for you. Gave her another $100. Came back the third day, and I think about it, this is a 15-year-old girl, $200. Came back the third day. He said, look, I'm not gonna stay here long. I want to give you my number because I want us to get together this weekend at a Dairy Queen, because I want to do whatever I can to help you to get to the next level of whatever you want to do. He said, oh, by the way, here's another $100. So unfortunately, they got together at Dairy Queen, and they communicated, and he convinced her to give her a ride home. Unfortunately, he never took her home. He took her to a hotel. There were 3 other men waiting for her. and she was raped repeatedly that night. Now, think about this: a wholesome girl, 15 years old. You know what I mean? And so when I heard that story, that really hit home. You know, because of one of the first things he said, the manager of McDonald's, he said, you know what? If I was more educated in this, I could have stopped this. I could have prevented this. You know, and so that story it really stayed with me throughout the whole walk. You know, because I'm like, man, think about it. This guy here, he was very patient. He didn't strike all at once. You know, he was very charming. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, wow, that really hit home. And so that fueled me to just kind of do whatever I can do to try to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So in hearing that, Roger, my question is, and also Dr. Anderson, you can chime in as well. You know, we always want to kind of educate not only just our listening audience, but our young people as well. And what are some of the defenses or ways that we can bring this to light or help protect those innocent ones out there so that they can't be manipulated? And I want
Well, I know Sandra will have follow up, but I think what I've learned, you know, because I'm still learning this whole thing of this, you know, about human trafficking. But what I've seen is these community events, they make a big difference, you know, because I can't tell you how many times, even myself, you know, before I really learned about human trafficking, I'm thinking like the movie Taken. It's like that. Okay, it's only country to country. It's this, you know what I mean? I had no idea it's right within my neighborhood. You know what I mean? So I think education on a small level, like back in the days, you remember when they had the war on drugs? You had schools talking about it. You had radio stations talking about it. You had billboards. Everybody knew there was a war on drugs. Not really many people know there's a war on human trafficking because there's not. And so I think starting on the basic level is speaking to churches and schools and where regular community people are at. I think that's a good starting point.
And I'll chime in with that, Roger. And I think what Roger just said, what Roger is doing is actually combating trafficking because he's bringing awareness. He's on the front line. He introduced me to Nisi and Tanika. Remember, Roger? And that's when we made Taking an Innocence Project, which is the clip that I sent you, Mr. Henry. And so this is how I met these amazing filmmakers. And then we came together to produce Taking Innocence docuseries, which is about my experience going through trafficking at 11 years old. And so how can we prevent it? How can we disseminate this information? The number one way, and I said it from the beginning, it starts in our home. We're so desensitized to this topic. We're so desensitized to it. In the African American, this looks very normal. Okay, this is normalized because we have normalized dysfunction. We normalize the N-word. Okay, and we don't even realize. I think we realize it, but we haven't come to terms with it that we were trafficked to this country. Okay, we wasn't bought here voluntarily. We were trafficked to the U.S. and around the African diaspora. So understanding that, we have to educate ourselves. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people perish from the lack of knowledge." And so we have to be teachable, because if we're teachable, all of this is fixable. Think about when you watch wildlife safaris, National Geographics, The Lion King, okay? What animal is more susceptible to being taken by predators in the wild, by the lions, by the hyenas, by the jaguars? It's the ones that are left behind, the little ones that are just tagging behind the pride, tagging behind the group, right? And that's what's happening in our community. We've lost our protection out of our home. 15 out of 15 of participants in my qualitative research, fatherlessness. So if the father is not there, who's protecting our children? Who's protecting our young boys and our young girls? Who's making sure that they're okay? And by the way, mothers, single family mothers, African American women are disproportionately at a higher rate of being single mothers running head of households, single mother homes. What does that tell you? They're working 2 and 3 jobs oftentimes. Oftentimes there's a stranger coming in that house in the form of a boyfriend or a potential partner that we don't know if he has, some dark patterns about him, or if he has a malicious intent towards her children. That's what happened with me. My stepfather was a merchant marine, right? I had no clue that at 7 years old, he would do to me what he did to me. And what he did to me led to me running away by the age of 11, because no child deserves to be touched sexually or physically abused. But that's what we're dealing with. And we've dealt with that since the beginning of time. This dysfunction that's happening in our families.
Now, I'm going to jump in here, Dr. Anderson, and throw in a monkey wrench. Now, okay, I was doing some research. Not only is the father involved, or the absentee of a father, but you have women who have actually participated in becoming ringleaders in this human trafficking thing. I think Hawaii I read something about Hawaii. A lot of those the human trafficking, sexual trafficking, they are involved to the degree, not in its totality, but they are becoming equally involved in this human trafficking, sex trafficking as well. Now, so here we have both entities, the man and the woman. So how do we combat this? Where do we focus? How do we do this? It was mind-boggling to me to know that a mother.
Oh yeah.
Well, let me digress. Some years ago, cocaine was heavily populated in our neighborhoods. Mothers were selling their daughters and giving up their children, for just a hit, So this. Okay, let me stop rambling. The fact that we all are involved in it, we it's kind of hard. Not just you're studying what you're doing, Doc, but it's hard for Black men to accept this brunt. I don't want to accept this ugly situation. If we don't bring the Black man in to address this situation, we're gonna find ourselves again deeper than where we are. Did I just ramble through that? No.
I don't think you rambled at all. I think you made a very pertinent point, and that is, this is not a gender-based crime. Okay, this is a human-based crime. So I don't mean to imply that this is only, the male species doing this. As a matter of fact, Angel Carter, who Roger and I are very familiar with, and she's one of my mentees. Her daughter was trafficked by friends at her school, and she was killed at the age of 18 in human trafficking. And so, and you saw her, Mr. Henry, in the documentary that I sent you. So you see, this is not even about adults. Children traffic. Children get in on this. So this is not about gender. This is about our humanity. This is about our conscience. This is about our morality. And the farther we get away from our Creator, the farther we get away from His precepts and His principles that He has already established for our life and the way that we should live, the farther we get away from our.
Dr. Andrew, you're right. I want to go to a couple of the comments on the screen here. Miss Deborah Mizell out of Georgia, she said, there it is. She was saying how powerful it was, and she mentioned the fact that our ancestors were trafficked. Okay, and so this is not a new concept. It's another form of slavery, if you will. So,
yeah, I'm at the point now where, how do we see the red lights? How do we continue to be mindful of it? I know teachers and schools, they're under certain task of doing the educational portion, but they spend probably more time with our children than we do as parents. And Roger, you mentioned the whole campaign that was going on with the war on drugs. Should there be some additional training that we get as parents, as well as people that are in touch with our kids on a regular basis, to kind of pick up on some of these things or identify these inconsistencies in some of our kids as they maybe venture off?
Right. Well, let me tell you what I thought about, and this is a very sensitive statement, especially within our Black community, our Black families. You know, many times for us growing up, we would have those touchy-feely cousins or uncles or grandfather, grandma, or you know what I mean? And a lot of times it was ignored. Matter of fact, if you brought it to the attention of a parent, you know what I mean, you would get punished for it, because you don't go there, you don't talk about it, you know what I mean? And so I think a lot of what we're experiencing now is because we made light of the violations that we experienced. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's like, I didn't let my kids do sleepovers. You know why? Because I got a lot of little cousins, and I know how they are. You know what I'm saying? A lot of it starts from that. You know, and like I said, that's not a, you know, unfortunately with us Blacks, it was kind of a norm back then. You know, but unfortunately it snowballed, and it has turned into a monster now. So I think we can't ignore even within our families.
Yeah. You know, and I don't want to discount those low down dirty men who have engaged in this. Now I gotta say that, and yet a majority of them are hard heads who, for whatever reason, whatever warp transpondent is not working in their brain, whatever, so I'm not discounting that. This is an ugly situation, and we can do something about it. I was trying to and Dr. Anderson, you and I talked before about the prevalence, if you will, of HIV and AIDS, and how it just goes around and around and around in this atmosphere, this spirit, if you will.
Absolutely. And that's the thing we don't talk about. When we are talking about HIV, we must talk about human trafficking, because no John is putting on a condom before he rapes a young girl or a young boy. And like Roger said at the top of our hour, where are the cases? He's not seeing these people being prosecuted. He's not seeing these sex buyers and traffickers being prosecuted. And I'm going to tell you why. We don't report. Our reporting attitudes is just as poor as our help-seeking attitudes. So where we need to seek help for counseling, and when we have most of us have lived through trauma and grief, but how many of us have gone to see a therapist? And then we wait until the symptoms are so bizarre and so out of control because our allostatic load have caused us to what's called flood. We're flooding in emotions, and we can't self-regulate anymore. Then we're put on a pill. And unfortunately, these medications mask the symptoms. It's not dealing with the underlying problem. And until we deal with it through counseling, through psychotherapy, that's what I had to go through. And until I went through that, everyone, let me tell you, I needed counseling. I cannot underscore that enough. You can't go through being touched at 7 years old. And like you said, I'm Mr. Henry and Mr. Wright, no one believes you. Roger mentioned it. They say, don't talk about that in the family. You're going to mess up the family. So we assume that responsibility and that shame for what an adult did to us, or a young adult. We internalize all that shame and we take it to the grave. And then it manifests. It manifests as drug addiction. I went through that. Teen pregnancy, pregnant at 13 years old. Suicidal ideation. I was in the back of an ambulance at 15 trying to take my life. Substance abuse, that's a big one. War on drugs, like Roger talked about. I was in the mix of that. Received a felony arrested on national television at the age of 18 years old. So you go through all of these social determinants. Why? Because there's no second rescue. We suppress everything that happens to us. God forbid if you're a man. I can't tell you the men clients that I have that talk to me. And of course they talk to me because they know everything that they disclose is confidential. And I have to honor that. And I always will, because I honor my profession. But they tell me about the sodomy. They tell me about what happened to them at 6, 7 years old from an uncle, from a cousin, from a stranger. And they don't tell anyone. They take it to a grave because there's a next level of shame when you're a man and you go through trafficking and when you go through that type of sexual assault. But no matter who you are, you have to have counseling, because if you don't, I promise you, you will self-destruct. And that's what we're seeing. And I went through that, and all the way from being on crack cocaine and alcoholism, because I'm trying to numb out what I'm feeling. And literally what you're feeling, we call them flashbacks. But what it is you can't sleep, you can barely eat, and you need something to help you not feel. Because every time that I was aware or not out of my mind and I was trying to be present for my children, I would smell the smell, literally. Smell what they smelled like, feel what it felt like. No one can touch me. Sexuality, totally distorted in my mind. Am I gay? Am I straight? What am I? I don't know what I am, because it totally distorts your sense of sexuality, your sense of humanity. And so what do? We will oftentimes perpetuate that on someone else, or we will implode. Men, oftentimes, according to their pathology, they will perpetuate it on someone else. Women have more of a prevalence to perpetuate it inward. That means we will cut. We will get some type of eating disorder, whether we're gorging ourselves with food or whether we're not eating at all with bulimia or anorexia. That's how it manifests. But it will always manifest in some type of self-destructive way. That's why our prisons are full of Black men, not because they're evil or malicious or just totally irredeemable, but because they've had unresolved trauma that they didn't know how to resolve. They didn't know how to seek the help and how to get the culturally competent help, by the way, because our experiences are very unique. Very unique to what's in the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual, to tell us what should I diagnose you with. No. Our experiences are very unique.
So let me jump in here real quick, because Roger, you were in the system. You saw people coming in and out of the courtrooms. Was there anything that the courts were doing to help these individuals, to your knowledge?
Let me tell you, there are two observations that I thought about, and it was very discouraging. I remember a defendant, mainly a Black man, will come before the judge, and this particular judge, every time a defendant would come before a Black male defendant, her question to him would be, "What is your criminal past?" Not, "Do you have a criminal past?" What is, you know what I mean? Like the expectation of, okay, he's got something. You know, and that was discouraging. And number two, I hardly, and I'm not just saying this, I hardly saw fathers in court for their kid. Hardly. When I say hardly, I mean hardly. It was always the mom. You know, and so what Sandra is saying is right on point. Like we're hurting because we lack that male protection. You know, the male security that I know. For me, my dad. I lost my dad when I was like 19 years old, and I was just starting to go to Everglades Middle School, which is not, we're in Dandy. Back in the day, Everglades, it was a little rough, and so I remember feeling insecure. I remember feeling just like I can go either way because I feel like, okay, no, dad wasn't there anymore. You know what I mean? And then, so I understand the lack of father and how you have to fight all the more harder to not become a statistic because of.
And these traffickers know this. They know this. They do their homework. They know how to groom, like the gentleman that Roger was talking about, giving that girl $100 and coming back and showing this face. That's called dark psychology. These people are very astute. They know what they're doing, and they know, just like I know the statistics, they know the statistics. They know there's not oftentimes not a black man in that home. There's no protector in that home. Oftentimes, our mothers, the ones that love us very much, is introducing our groomer to us without ever knowing it.
Yeah.
She introduced my groomer. His name was Robert. That was my stepfather. At 7 years old, he's showing me a Hustler magazine. At 7 years old, I'm learning psychologically how to become numb and escape and not want to go to school. And I love school. I was such a nerd, but I didn't want to go to school anymore. And when I was made to go to school, I was not attentive. I was not engaging. Are teachers looking at this, or are they calling us delinquents, troublemakers? Because that's what I was called back then. Okay, they didn't see something's going on with Sandra. That's not her usual behavior. I was always the one raising my hand to answer every question. I love school. I always have. But when trauma is happening and sexual abuse and other ACEs, which are known as adverse childhood experiences, we will change. Our personalities start to change and fade. And then comes criminality, then comes promiscuity, and then we're set up for a lifetime of all these adverse experiences. But we can stop it. We can stop it by being aware, by paying attention, and by doing what Roger is doing. Roger has literally walked the country. And I'll be with you, Bobby. I'll be with you, Mr. Henry. And Mark, along Roger's side walking. So there is something that we can do to bring more awareness to this.
Oh, absolutely. Put that comment up from Miss McCleary, please, where she says teachers are often, what Miss McCleary says is, teachers are often first to see this in the children, the withdrawal, the acting out, the poor self-esteem. Unfortunately, some abusers are schools. Okay, yeah, by not turning a blind eye. I want to go back for a minute. And we reached out to, maybe it was the wrong source, but we reached out to the Pride Center to try to see if we could get someone from the male perspective who got caught up in this trafficking to come on the show to talk about it. I know they're out there, but we couldn't at the time. We didn't have anybody come up. Roger, when you were out walking, did you encounter any male figures who had been a part of this human trafficking, sex trafficking? Did you have any conversation with any?
Yes, actually, yes. Yes, I did actually. And actually in Fort Lauderdale, a good friend named Nathan, and he taught me something about that. You know, we as men, we have a hard time talking as far as communicating how we feel, communicating when something has happened to us, especially something negative or tragic or things like that. And you know, he shared with me how that really haunted him for years. You know, you don't tell people about things that's going on. You know, that can lead to mental illness. That can lead to suicide, all kind of things. You know what I mean? And so, the last statistic I read was men are one of the fastest growing, or young men are one of the fastest growing victims as far as human trafficking. You know, and my question is, man, how many victims are out there as far as young men who aren't talking about it because of embarrassment and things like that? You know, because it's just we're it's twice as hard for us to talk about how we feel, and so I know that's a real issue going on right now.
It is. If I may chime in, I had a client last year who was a victim, very young, and he just it's difficult, okay, because we're not used to, men are not socialized to cry and show emotion. They're just not. And so because they're not been socialized to show their emotion, it's almost like they deny themselves their very humanity. Is it not human to cry? You have tear ducts. I don't expect you to carry a child because you don't have a uterus, but I do expect you to be able to cry and not feel like like something's wrong with you because you're not crying or showing emotion. And because he couldn't, he became very violent. Unfortunately, he had no reason, he had no business in jail, but he was arrested and then he was released. And finally, when he came to me, because his mentor told him to speak with me, I was able to help him disclose to his mother. And the hardest thing was for him to disclose is what happened to him. It was hard for him to say, I was sodomized as a child. And that groomed me for what happened to me as an older adult, because he was in a club. And unfortunately, this is what a lot of our listeners need to know. Trafficking is happening in clubs. They're waiting for you to come to, I don't care if it's a gay club, straight club, don't matter club. They're trafficking in clubs. And this is what we need to know. And this young man, and he became my mentee after some time, but it hurt me because the last time I heard from him, he was in another country, and they reached out to me, they being the mental health team of his school, and I didn't hear from him anymore because he refused treatment, he refused everything, and he just started to decline because he wouldn't get counseling. He couldn't get past the socialization of being a male and being a victim, and we couldn't get past that. We have to become teachable, because if we're teachable, we're fixable.
And Doc, can I just say this? Is this why it's so hard to police this? Is this why it makes it difficult for our law enforcement and our state attorney's offices to literally, prosecute people when victims aren't coming forward? They're just being embarrassed and ashamed about what they've experienced, and they don't want to go through it again and again and again. The emotional agony of what they went through.
I'm going to go there, Mr. Harry, and I'm going to say this. A few years ago, Bill Cosby was arrested and prosecuted for something that they said he did. His accusers were mostly Caucasian women. Am I correct? Stop me if I'm wrong, and I'll stop now.
You're right.
We don't have, nor have we ever had, that sense of entitlement. And I'm not saying that in a negative connotation. I'm saying it as a part of our humanity, our dignity, our right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, okay? So hear me when I say this. We don't have that. We will internalize it because we never had it. We're just happy for the semblance of freedom, so-called, that we have in this country, to the point where we don't even fight for what's rightfully ours, which is reparations, which is our land, which is the only real estate of having land. We're paying rent on land that we're supposed to own from our forefathers, but the only thing that we're owning is, again, the vestiges of slavery, the N-word, the sexualization. Look at media. Our women are half-dressed, calling each other the N-word and the B-word and the H-word and every other dehumanizing word. We're just assuming the position that we assumed when we first came to this country in chains. Same pathology. I promise you, I know what I'm talking about here, okay? I've done my homework. It's the same pathology. Who calls themselves the N-word? What other race do you know that calls themselves a word their slave masters called their ancestors hanging from a tree? My dad, 1921, he was born. He was so depressed. He became an alcoholic. And I'm so happy that I had the honor of holding his hand and kissing his face at 74 when he took his last breath. I had the honor of doing that. But for most of his life, he never felt like he could be a dad. He could be a husband. He could be anything. So you know what he did? He kept tripping over the imprint. What do I mean by the imprint? Let me back up and explain so you understand what I'm saying and our listeners understand. Right now, Roger, if you pour concrete in front of your home to make a new driveway, and you pour that concrete and you're waiting for it to dry, but before it dries, someone steps in it. When it dries, what's going to be in your concrete?
That print.
Of your new driveway. It's
Right.
going to be that footprint.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing with us neurologically. In the formative years, those early stages of development, the formative years is like that wet concrete. And whatever imprints it, once it's set, the imprint is there. And so we will keep tripping over the same imprint. And in my father's case, being called the N-word, and he told me this before he passed away. Most of his life, he didn't struggle for the right to be in a job, the right to own a home, the rights of any other American citizen. He struggled for the right to be, to exist, to be a man, to be human. And when he explained that to me, I understood. And so I didn't hold it against him that he fought my mother with domestic violence, and that I saw that. And I heard all the screaming, and it ravished my childhood. I didn't hold it against him that he wasn't there for me when I called out to him when my stepfather was sexually assaulting me at 7. And I called out for my dad. I literally did, not knowing that I hadn't seen him since the divorce. I didn't hold it against him that he wasn't there for me every time I needed him. I was just honored to be there for him when he was sick and having stroke after stroke and all kind of other things that a lot of Black people go through disproportionately, because mental health affects our physical health exponentially. So we trip over the same imprint that happened to us from childhood, because we don't even understand that these things transfer through our DNA. And even though we may not have lived in the 1600s or the 1700s or the 1800s, it's still a part of our DNA, to the point where we're calling our brothers and sisters the N-word, and to the point where we're fighting with each other more than we're fighting with anyone else. We're killing each other. Black males are killing each other disproportionately than any other race group in fighting. Lack of understanding, this is what we're dealing with.
And as you said, Doc, it's still impacting us today. And you did touch on something that I think we're going to have to bring back for another show, and that's that dignity restoration, or just regaining dignity altogether. But I think we're getting ready to come to the close for this particular show. I mean, it's so powerful, the information that's being shared here. I tell you, we're going to have to continue to revisit and educate just not only our young people, but all of us, because it's unfortunately deeply rooted.
Yeah, it is.
In so many of us.
Before we get out of here, I need for you guys to put your information up there. Roger, you got that 501c3 stop. First stops. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of what that is, and put the contact information in there? And Dr. Anderson, can you put your information in there? This clinical lesson has to go from here to a place where those who have been infected and affected can feel safe to talk about it. I know nobody wants to come on. Everybody can't come on the screen and be a Dr. Anderson or a Roger DeHart and expose themselves with the vulnerability of being seen as someone who have endured such a traumatic instance. But we need this. The Bible is full of stories of those who have overcome. So Black folk and the rest of you out there who are listening, if you got a story to tell, then tell your story. It's not for you to keep. It's for you to talk about how you have overcome, so others can see it. Don't be afraid. Yeah, it's hurtful. Yeah, what happened to you was awful. But doggone it, you don't want it to continue to happen to everybody else. So Roger, put your contact stuff in there. Tell us a little bit about that organization.
Sure. My organization is called First Stop Incorporated. First Stop Incorporated, meaning saving teens and others from predators. And what my main focus is awareness and education. You know, it's the awareness. Let me be honest. Like, I only started my nonprofit because when I was planning my DC walk, people wanted to donate. I'm like, if they're gonna donate, I'm gonna at least make it a 501c3 so they can write off. And so that's why I initially started it, but I decided to keep it, and it's been very beneficial. But yeah, I pretty much raised money to have my awareness walks, in which my next awareness walk would be March 31st in New York City. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Central Park. Okay, I'm pretty much done with the long walks. I'm doing shorter walks down in major cities. So yeah, New York City is going to be March 31st, and on the week of January 7th week, I'm flying to Las Vegas. I'm meeting with the Las Vegas Human Trafficking Task Force because I'll be planning to walk next year right down the Las Vegas Strip sometime next year. So so that's my goal, to bring awareness and kind of let people know that hey, this is not right, and we need to try to fight this as much as we can.
Yeah, I need those dates because I'm joining you on one of those walks. I'm serious. I'm not playing. I'm dead serious.
Okay.
I'm gonna join you on one of those walks. Okay. And I'm gonna get some sponsors to sponsor.
So that'd be greatly appreciated, Bobby.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm having difficulty putting my information in. Hey, Sandra, I'm going to text you. When I text you, can you put my information in? Because I can't. My computer's acting. Okay, I'll text you. Okay.
I will.
All right.
Okay. And Sam, while he's doing that, put your contact information in there. And I know that there's some folk out there that know somebody that needs to be counseled, if you will, or to have that conversation. Again, the young lady who was supposed to come on tonight, if you're out there listening, please get in contact with Dr. Anderson, and let's come back and address the issues. The only way to get demons out of your life is to face those demons.
Amen.
With the right therapy.
With the right therapy, yes.
Yeah. I think, Doctor, you said it so profoundly that there's specifics that we go through, especially as African Americans, and I think there's the right counseling for each and every one of us is necessary.
Yeah, and Perry, our host Perry Busby in Tallahassee, unfortunately, with Infinity wasn't acting right in your area. But Perry, I think you didn't want to come on and face the shame of your state, Texas, and what they're doing there, and we need to talk about that. So
that'll get them on. That'll get them back on for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So we just want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing. Any closing remarks before we close out tonight?
For me, I just want everyone to keep in mind that last I checked, there were over close to 800,000. I checked this number out: 800,000 missing Black women and young girls in this country. 800,000. Think about that. That's hard to fathom, but that's the reality, and we have to, because you know how it is. Unfortunately, if these were other cultures, other races, if that number was that high, the media will be going crazy. They'll get more attention. So we have to be truly our brothers and our sisters' keeper, and really try to do whatever we can to try to help one person at a time.
And before I comment, Roger, I didn't get that text yet. Can you tell me that information? I'll go ahead and type it in now.
Sure. Is firststopswithas.org. That's how you get to the website. Firststopswithas.org.
Firststops.org?
Yes.
All right.
And so I think what I'll do is I'll end by saying this. Our people perish from a lack of knowledge. And inquiring knowledge is going to help us in this. It's very doable because the Lord already told us that the kingdoms of this earth, of this world, will be the kingdoms of our God and his Christ. And so that's the answer. That was the answer in my life. I didn't think I would live to see 20 years old after going through trafficking, after going through domestic violence, after going through drug addiction. And I thought I would never get off of drugs ever. Crack cocaine, alcohol, these are formidable strongholds. Never thought I would ever be free. But he who the Son sets free is free indeed. And it's through the power of Christ and acquiring knowledge, breaking my ego and becoming teachable. That's why I'm here today. And I'm so grateful for Roger. I'm so grateful for you, Mr. Henry and Mr. Wright, for doing what you're doing and giving survivors like me a voice. And not only did I survive trafficking and domestic violence and drug addiction, but also many years after coming out of trafficking and after surviving everything I did, I became very ill, very, very sick, started breaking out all over my body, and still again and yet again, going to the doctor, and they didn't know how to diagnose me because I wasn't white, I wasn't gay, and I wasn't a male. And by the time I was diagnosed, my CD4 was 2. I had AIDS, last stages. I had no immunity. That was over 30 years ago. So today, I fight for the life of others because I know what it takes to get past trauma and get to the other end where you have differentiated, which means you just have reached a level in your life where you're no longer entrenched or attached to trauma bonds, to codependency, and everything else that comes along with that. And lastly, I'm going to hold up this. This is a pearl. This is pearls I got from a young woman that I was trying to get out of sex trafficking. We were on the street in Orlando, and this woman was with her pimp, and I knew it was her pimp. And beautiful woman, gorgeous, gorgeous Puerto Rican girl. And the last day I saw her, she put this in my hands, and she said, "I can't leave. I can't get out," because he told me the only way was out was in a casket. And so everything we tried to do, everything we promised to get her out, to snatch her up, to take her, until we're free here in our minds from trauma, from grief, from fear, from anger, we will never be free in a literal sense. So we're here for it. And I'm looking forward to the walk on March 31st with you, Roger. And I'm just looking forward to bringing this to an end because it is coming to an end.
That's right.
Yes. All right. On that segue, we want to thank our guest again for coming on tonight. And you want to break the news about this show for year 2022?
Well, this is the end. This is the last show for this year. So we are planning some new things for next year. I just want to say this has truly been a year of tears, smiles, accomplishments, and some failures. But has been a year of growth, and we are certainly thankful for those who have faithfully tuned in to the show as it comes across live, and to those who go back later and take a look at it. The topics have been, some of them have really been tearjerkers, and has allowed us to think, what is our role as human beings and being our brothers and sisters keepers? They have all been meaningful. We have tried our best to engage in topics that are of interest and of benefit to incoming tides, to raise all ships, to uplift as we climb, to bring some healing in some cases, and to snatch the covers off those who are perhaps doing some unscrupulous stuff. We have tried to be a voice like John in the wilderness crying out, also as a balm in Gilead to heal. It has been at times appeared to be unsurmountable or insurmountable, whichever term is correct. But there has been a way, God has made a way for us to do this and to continue to do it. And we are grateful for that. We've lost a lot of people that started the year off with us who are not here today at the end. As a matter of fact, we've lost 3 of our fraternity members in a week. That has caused a understanding that we're not here permanently. We're on a temporary journey, and we should do what we can to heal others. No, we don't always agree, and if we're doing wrong, we should be called out for it. And I'm just thankful for those who have allowed us to do it. You've been right for filling when we needed you and coming in. And Brother Perry, I'm grateful for what you have done, to Broderick and Ariel for manning the station that would allow us to do this. Even in the midst of technical difficulties, we have stayed the course, and we are grateful. I guess I could say that it's all because it had been pre-planned, pre-arranged before we were even yet conceived in our mother's womb, that this time would come, and we're grateful for that. So I ask that you continue to join in with us as we come back in January. We're gonna have a messy Thursday where we're gonna talk a little bit about some gossip stuff. We're gonna talk about Wendy Williams, that particular situation, and some other messy stuff with our quote unquote black leaders, or supposed to be black leaders. But we're gonna do all that, and we're gonna do it out of love. So can I wrap it up, Dave? Did I miss anything? I'll wrap it up. So I want to say thank you to everyone, to those who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. To those who celebrate Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa. Feliz Navidad, Happy Hanukkah. And to those who just celebrate for the fact of celebration, right on. And Dr. Anderson, may you continue to prosper by touching and healing those who have went through a smidget of what you've been through. May you continue to pull them to the point of where you are, that they can see themselves in you and understand that God ain't through with them yet.
Amen.
That they can actually look at you for somebody who is a ray of hope, that is the truth. No pretense, no made up nothing, who went through pure hell to be where you are now, a living testimony. And to you, Roger, may you continue to wear out those tennis shoes that you put on your feet. I don't know if Nike is sponsoring you or if Converse or whomever, but we got to find those who believe in this cause to give you what you need to keep on walking. Amen. God willing, I see Deborah Mizell wants to know the dates, so I'm sure that she will find some way to get us involved in what you're doing. So to everybody, Merry Christmas, God bless you, and in the words of my pastor, except one, I love you, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. God bless you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.